This is Hashtag Finance, presented to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange, the exchange for entrepreneurs. With your host, Anil Mall.
Welcome to our viewers to another edition of Hashtag Finance. This is our podcast brought to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to not one, but two gentlemen. They are both with a company called Plymouth Rock Technologies that's based out of Plymouth, Massachusetts, if I'm not. That's right, Plymouth, Massachusetts. I'm talking today to Dana Wheeler. Dana is the Director, President, and CEO. Say hi.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Great. And joining him today will be Mr. Douglas Smith, who's the chairman of the board. Welcome, Douglas, to the Hashtag Finance podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great. Why don't I let you start off, Dana? Why don't you give our audience just a very brief intro into the company, and then we can get into a lot of the details.
Sure. We started the company probably about 4 years ago now. We had a team of people that I've been working with for many, many years. We've worked together in different organizations, but one of the common themes of our team is we've been working in the same technology area, sensing and imaging products, also in wireless communications, using free space optics technology. Millimeter wave is kind of a common theme that we'll be talking about today of what we do in some of our products. And, you know, we realized after 9/11 that these technologies that we've been developing and commercializing actually that are in production, and we can talk about a few of them a little bit later, can be used for other applications like threat detection, search and rescue, detecting contraband on people and baggage and so forth. So that's really how we when we got together, we decided to go and start Plymouth Rock and kind of concentrate on that aspect of the market. In 2009, I think it's kind of interesting to talk about. We started another company that we addressed the standoff or checkpoint security needs for mostly law enforcement and military organizations. And it's very important because we learned a lot about working with the military and what their needs were and how to build military equipment as far as robustness, environmental concerns, and so forth. So we worked with both organizations in the UK and the US, and we designed and manufactured a radar that could detect suicide bombers at 40 to 50 meters. Douglas was actually involved with us in this company. It's called Radio Physics Solutions. And so he was helping us on the US side, introducing us to some of the DHS groups and so forth. So what happened was as we developed a system, we got fairly good traction with the special ops community. And in 2013, I always like to bring this up since I'm from the Boston area. After the bombings at the Boston Marathon, it really kind of came clear to us that the technology that we were developing could have helped stop these guys. And so maybe not the exact technology we're using, but derivatives of that technology or multiple sensors that we're going to talk about as we get into the talk here. So that's kind of a little bit of the background. In 2016, we got the group all together. We had been working together from 2009 on, took a little sabbatical. And then in 2016, we actually got the team together, and that's the team that we have now, which is mostly in the UK and the US. Yes. We have an office in Vancouver for obvious reasons. We're a foreign issuer based in Vancouver, and we have a corporate secretary up there that does a lot of our filings and helps us there. So most of the team we have in the UK, up in Manchester, at Manchester Metropolitan University. We'll talk about the academic group and how they help us a little bit later on in the talk also. But that's really in 2016 where we started talking, having Skype calls, really visualizing what products would really help this threat detection market. And it turned into something a little bit different as we're going to get into that, but that's really how we got this company started. We have a big passion for threat detection, search and rescue, and so forth. And the technologies we've been developing over 35 years are applicable to what we do today.
Dana, I think that was a great breakdown into the company. I'm actually quite excited to learn and educate myself into not just threat detection, but what a company like Plymouth Rock's role is within this space. Let's talk a little bit about your background and how you guys got into this. But I'm gonna start off with Douglas and let him get into that. So, Douglas, what brought you into this space?
Sure. Once again, thanks for having me. I mean, I
Of
think
course.
a lot of what Dana said. So I've spent about half my life in the national security space. In fact, I was at DHS in the midst of the Boston Marathon bombing attack. I was in Boston afterwards, 24 hours after the attack. I've been all over the world seeing the aftermath of suicide bombers, active shooter. I was at Sandy Hook and witnessing so many of these things that can you stop everything? Of course not. There is no secret magic weapon. There just isn't. I wish there was. But can you do what we called in sort of the security space, create a layered effect? We sort of call it Swiss cheese. When you go to the deli counter and you buy a pound of cheese, the first piece you could see right through. You add a second piece, you see a little bit less, a third piece, even less. And so what got me so excited about what Dame and the team was doing was an ability to let us truly see, see from 30 meters out, see that someone had a suicide vest, a bomb, a knife hidden under their jacket. Is it going to stop the crazy person from what they're doing and planning? No, but can we add yet another layer into the national security space to do it? And seeing, the depth of research and technology and experience that Dana and his team brought to the table got me really excited. The other exciting part, and our chief marketing officer, who's based out of the UK, he's been on the operations side. I mean, he's been in operation centers with Scotland Yard, working on Olympic Games, et cetera. And that's the secret sauce of Plymouth Rock. We are all a collection of, first and foremost, engineers, because if the technology doesn't work, none of it works. But we also have operators like myself, people who have been deployed into the field, having to rely and use on it. And I think that's what makes us an exciting company. The other thing that makes us exciting about this company is there are no egos. We don't aspire to have our name on top of a giant skyscraper in Vancouver or in Ottawa or Toronto or Boston or New York. What we aspire to do is have the best cutting edge technology out there to save lives. And if one of the big boys, well, we won't name them, wants to put us in as the brains, that's great for us, because what we're driven at is saving lives. And the technologies that we're going to talk about today all can do that, whether it's our millimeter wavelength, our proprietary drone technology. It's all about saving lives. And that's what made me so excited about it.
Of course. And Douglas, just by you speaking, I can say you're really passionate about that. I wanted to ask, you mentioned that your background, you've spent an extensive time at the DHS, which is the Department for Homeland Security, for anybody that might not know. Do you want to maybe talk to us a bit about that? How long did you do that? What kind of gave you that passion to pursue that as a career?
Sure. In fact, it goes back even further to that. Way back when I was as a young pup, I was working in the security space overseas. I was working subsequently for President Clinton and then General Wesley Clark, the Supreme Allied Commander during the Kosovo situation, as they say, north of the border. And just always sort of been very involved in it. When Barack Obama got elected president, he asked me if I'd come in to take on a new role at the department, and it was the Assistant Secretary for the Private Sector. And so what that role was and what I was responsible for was interfacing, my department interfaced with businesses globally on how do we keep the economy moving, how to not make the false choice between security and the economy. And so in that role, I interfaced across the entire globe, my counterparts and fellow governments, with the tens of millions of businesses in the United States, with the global aviation business. And the thing that is really critical and what makes me excited about Plymouth Rock is these are about partnerships. Government cannot do it alone, and the private sector can't do it alone. And so what I saw sitting in dark windowless rooms, 3 stories below ground, reading classified documents, was the importance of partnership. And that these are big, challenging problems, as we saw with the tragedy in Manchester a few years ago at the Ariana Grande concert. Look, the UK has been battling terrorism for years. They're very, very good at it, but things slip through. And being able to add another layer to protect people, and it's the technology that we're bringing to bear that can do that, is what really got me excited. And it's the kind of stuff that the government, they need. I mean, they need private sector ingenuity. The government isn't making, what we like to sort of call it like the bullets and the guns. Private sector makes that. Private sector makes the computer I'm on right now. The government doesn't make my Apple that I'm talking to you over. It doesn't make my iPhone that I could call you with. It doesn't make the L3 machines in airports. It doesn't make the F-35 stealth fighters. What they need is smart technology from the outside, but that speaks their language. And that's what's key. How do you in real time collaborate to solve tomorrow's problem with even further on technology versus yesterday's problem with yesterday's technology?
Absolutely. I think a perfect example of that is just what happened over the weekend with SpaceX and, them launching off into space as part of a private spaceship.
Yeah, and how cool was that? I have to say, as a sidebar, it was amazing to watch.
It was definitely a historical moment, overshadowed by a lot of stuff happening right now, which is definitely sad. But I think for this generation, it was really a big moment. I think once things settle down, people finally have a chance to realize on how big of an event that actually was.
Absolutely.
Dana, you yourself have a quite an extensive background in this space. Why don't I let you talk a little bit? I mean, you've worked Lockheed Martin, a bunch of other stuff, but I'll let you speak to that and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got in here.
Okay, well, my background is in engineering. Graduated from Southeastern Massachusetts University at the time. Now it's University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth, Mass. And kind of a unique degree. It was an electrical engineering degree, but I specialized in microwave theory. And the first position I took was at a company called Microwave Associates, or MACOM. And we were doing millimeter wave and microwave semiconductor work, component work, subsystem work there. So very early in my career, I got put into a mentor program there with a lot of famous people in the industry, guys from Bell Laboratories and some of the big universities, Stanford and UCal and so forth. So I was around a lot of guys that were doing a lot of guys and ladies, obviously, that were doing a lot of good early work in the field of millimeter wave and microwave technology. So I stayed there and went to a smaller company just to try to experience that. And I stayed there at the smaller company called Millitech that was out in Western Massachusetts. And they were specifically a millimeter wave company. They came out of the Radio Astronomy Observatory at UMass Amherst. And so they had a different business aspect to it. And so I learned a lot there. We built the business. And I kind of like the aspect of small businesses as far as you can really make an impact when you go to work every day. Because one of the other companies I worked for was Lockheed Martin. And they were very, very big. And, Lockheed Martin's a great company, but I still going to work every day to try to make an impact in a large corporation like that is very difficult. I did some business development there on the F-22, actually, from a semiconductor standpoint. So I enjoyed my time there, but I also learned, I think I'm a small business type of guy. I really like to start up groups, bring young engineers on, and that's what we did at Harmonics Corporation. Back in the late 80s, early 90s. And then I joined a company called TerraBeam that was very interesting. We acquired TerraBeam and they were doing free space optics communications and we were doing millimeter wave communication. So it was kind of a nice fit. And they just had a different business model. And that really got me, kind of motivated to do another startup company. So where we really started to get into threat detection was around, like I had mentioned before, 2009, when we started Radio Physics Solutions. And that's really what we were doing, specifically using millimeter wave radar technology for threat detection. And so, we did that for a while. We decided that we wanted to go in a different direction, and we started Plymouth Rock Technologies in 2016. And then we went public in 2018 on the CSE. We did a change of name and obviously a change of listing with a company in Canada. And here we are today. We're doing very well from a technology development standpoint. And one of the things I always like to point out, Anil, is the technology that we're using is technology that's in production and it's in our everyday lives. Pick your automobile, for instance, has an automobile radar now on it for collision avoidance, for side sensing, for speed control, and it does braking now. They're very smart cars nowadays. There's a lot of electronics on cars. Well, that technology was developed by a group of people, a good team at Macom that I was on, and it was developed back in the 90s. And it was millimeter wave technology, and it works at the same frequencies and the same wavelengths that we're using today for our shoe scanner and our radars and what we're mounting on drones, as I know we're going to talk to you about in a minute. But I always like to point out that it's not new technology. It's innovative technology. We're taking it to the next level, but it's not brand new. It's been out there and it's been proven to go into production.
No, you've hit on a lot of points there. Dana, before we get into the next stuff here, you mentioned waves, millimeter waves, and several other ones a few times. There might be some viewers who don't fully understand that. Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown into not just the different types of waves, but why they're so important to this technology?
Well, that's a great question, Anil. Thank you, because as an engineer, sometimes like this just goes right over my head there. So millimeter waves and microwaves are a RF spectrum, you know, above the normal. I guess what people would like to compare it with is, say, Wi-Fi. Everyone kind of understands Wi-Fi. It's in our daily lives. And so those are RF frequencies down in the low microwave bands, you know, that transmit data and receive data used with your cell phones. What millimeter waves are is they're just they're a smaller wavelength, higher frequency spectrum, but there's properties of millimeter waves that you're going to say, oh, no wonder why they use it for threat detection. There's properties of millimeter waves that penetrate clothing. It penetrates paint, thin coatings, thin dielectrics it'll penetrate. Not like an X-ray, where an X-ray penetrates your body and obviously can do what X-rays do. So we're in the bands below X-ray, below visible light, but still in the what we call the radio frequency bands, the high radio frequency bands. And again, the nice property about millimeter wave is that you can make antennas very small. So for the automotive radar example, they're sitting inside the bumper of your car. They're not a big antenna on top of your car. And they're very small, and the radar resolution is a technical term we use. It actually works very, very good as a radar to detect small objects on a human being, for example. And for threat detection, it's perfect because it penetrates clothing, but it doesn't penetrate your body. And so you can see anomalies above your body and below your clothing. And that's why we chose millimeter wave, and we weren't the only ones to choose that. Obviously, scientists have been working with millimeter wavelengths for a long, long time, both in space, you know, for crosslinks for satellite communications, something that Lockheed Martin had done for years, and other types of applications. But we feel that for threat detection, for search and rescue, some of these millimeter wave applications, they're just perfect for these applications.
So are you using this method, using radio waves, millimeter waves, as you mentioned, in all of your technology? Or
not all of our technology. So millimeter wave is kind of the background that we've had, and that's what we started using for radar because of the qualities of the waves I just told you about, the penetration properties. One of the things we learned over our careers, and certainly from a military aspect, the military guys that we've worked with have always been, you know, trying to push this on us. We build sensors, and sensors can be of many different modalities. I'm going to use the word modalities, and I'll make some hopefully useful comparisons. Like, you know, you talk about a mammogram for a breast image is kind of an X-ray type thing. Then you can use an ultrasound also, and ultrasounds are used in the medical industry a lot, and that can give you a little bit different type of an image. And then you can use an MRI, which is a magnetic resonant image. That gives you even a little different of an image, more of a cross-section, so to speak, where millimeter wave gives a different image too. It penetrates clothing, so it can see the body and can see if anything's on the body. So that's really why there's different modalities, whether it be ultrasound, X-ray, millimeter wave, and then another one that we're going to talk about is infrared. So infrared is the spectrum a little bit above millimeter wave that measures heat contrast. And you've probably seen a lot on TV nowadays with this COVID-19 pandemic that they're using infrared cameras and infrared to measure temperature of people, the temperatures and contrast. What infrared does, it makes a very good heat contrast meter. Some people use infrared technology to measure their houses to see where heat is leaking out. So they know, oh, geez, I've got to get new windows. I've got to get new doors. They can see the contrast of heat leaking from the inside of the house. So all those technologies put together can give you a very high probability of detecting a threat when you combine them as a combined sensor. And that's what our goal is, not to just use one modality. We're going to use multiple modalities and use the best ones for what they do best.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Dana. I think that's going to help a lot of our viewers better understand some of this tech that you're talking about. Douglas, did you have something to jump in there with, or can we move to the next? I actually wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, I mean, all I would add to that, and Dana said this, but I want to hammer it a little bit more, is that we're not trying to build a new mousetrap. We actually have a phenomenal mousetrap. And what we're trying to do is use that to make innovative solutions and combine them to be best in class. And that is a really important thing, because you'll hear a lot of people, a threat will happen, a challenge. Oh, like let's take COVID-19. Everyone's racing around trying to come up with a vaccine. We, in the threat detection space, we have the proven vaccine. Yeah. And that is a big difference. And that is something that I think makes us unique. And it's allowing us to truly focus on the delivery systems and how to make it effective, efficient, and affordable. Because you could build, if you're Lockheed or Raytheon, sure, you could build a staggeringly expensive deployment system, but then who can afford to use it? Our goal is to not only have state-of-the-art and truly proven technologies, but ones that could be afforded, that your local public high school could afford to use. And that is a really important differential. And I know Dana's sort of alluded to that, but it's the thing that really makes us special, that our technologies are not going to be for the few, they're going to be for the many.
No,
yeah, excellent point. Excellent point, Douglas.
That was a great point. I'm glad that you jumped in with that. And also, you guys are working, the company itself works with numerous government, law enforcement, military agencies using your innovative solutions. How are you able to comment on any of these agencies that you work with, both in the US and the UK? And what went into building these relationships for them to be able to kind of take notice of what a company like Plymouth Rock does?
Sure. Well, I'll let Dana jump on the back end, but I'll just start with just some current news that just applies, and I think it speaks to the trust level. In the United Kingdom, we just made public announcements, so it's already out there. It's a public release document. We signed an arrangement with the National Health Service, who is testing our one-of-a-kind drone, which we'll talk about later. But because of the relationships we have and the trust they have on what we can bring to market, the National Health Service in the United Kingdom came to us. They didn't come to Boeing. They didn't come to Lockheed Martin. No disrespect to those amazing companies. They're amazing companies. But they came to little old Plymouth Rock because we had the proven track record. And they knew we had the ability to turn on a dime to bring things there. If you go onto our website, you'll see, we've done wonderful trials, with the United States Army, which is, all public information. I mean, their results is not released per them, but the fact that we've done it is public information. And once again, it's because they're looking for nimble partners. They're cumbersome enough as it is, whether it's 3-letter agencies, militaries, et cetera. They have enough problems internally. The last thing they need from an outside vendor is one with a lot of baggage and a lot of cumbersome. And that's, once again, our secret sauce, our ability to quickly adapt a solution for them without a lot of red tape. But Dana, I think you wanted to add something else onto that.
Oh, sure. And to get back to the commercialization, and then I'll get into some of the agencies. But when I mentioned the automotive radar, I mean, the automotive radars, and this is to Douglas's point, when they were first being built by the Raytheons, because Raytheon, we're not going to pick on Raytheon today because I think they're a great company, and one of the guys on our advisory, Jason, will be calling me after this. But Raytheon made a really, really powerful threat detection system, but it was so expensive that they couldn't deploy them, all around the world and in smaller airports and things like that. So that was a good point that Douglas made, because we are, being a small business, you are nimble, you can do things faster. We've got some smart guys, and so do the big companies too, but we do things a lot cheaper and a lot faster. And one of the, I'm going to give you an example when you asked about the agencies. We, in our past, not just with Plymouth Rock, and we are working to work with these guys Plymouth Rock, we've worked with a group down in Florida called the Unique Mission Cell. And you can look this up online and everything, it's public information. This was really instrumental on how we developed our product and how we shaped it, I should say. What these guys did is they created these TSOAs. These are Army Special Ops. And they created these test sites that you would respond to a request for information, and they'd give you kind of what they were looking for either threat detection or gunshot detection, a lot of various different technologies, even communications, secure communications. And you had to pick one of those technology fields and put a quad chart together and send it down. And they'd invite you down to like a Quantico, Virginia, at the Marine Training Grounds. They'd have warfighter teams there that we would train to use our equipment and then give us valuable feedback on how they thought it worked, what they thought we needed to do with it to make their job easier. They would have maybe 1 or 2 days of training, and then we would train the trainer, meaning the guys that we trained had to train someone else. And then what we did is they went out on operational scenarios for the rest of the week, real life scenarios where they had a red team and a blue team, you know, the bad guys, the good guys. They would plant suicide bombs on the red team, you know, assault rifles hidden, and they'd go through a checkpoint, and we would have to detect them with our checkpoint radar. And we could see them coming in from 50 meters, and we'd have the operator be one of the warfighters using the equipment. And then after, they would have a what they would call an after operation review, and they would get up there and talk about our technology, what they liked about it, what it detected, did anyone get through the checkpoint. And we have a figure of merit, especially in the government, the DoD, they use called technology readiness levels, TRL. And when we first started going to these things, we had a TRL level of about 4 out of 10. And 4 is like just coming out of the laboratory. And we did these, probably 8 to 10 of these over a 2-year period. And we went from a TRL 4 up to almost a TRL 8, which is operational readiness. So these guys taught us a lot about the usage, what operators need to know, how we really need to make things simple for operators to use, and what they liked, what they did and didn't like about the system. So unbelievable experience for us to go through, and we're going to do it again in the near future. The other agencies that we use, over in the UK, I got engaged with a university called Manchester Metropolitan University, and they were kind of a center of excellence for imaging and sensing. And they had a really good team of PhDs and academics there that we're using today. We're partners with them today. One of them is on our board of advisories, Dr. Stewart Harmer. He has many patents and inventions on these types of threat detection systems. And so we were working with the UK Met Police. We were getting home office grants to further some of this technology. And some of the technology that we have today, like our shoe scanner that we're going to talk about, where, you know, we can detect threats in shoes, in an airport environment, or in a prison environment. And that was all developed at this university, more as an imaging solution to image for different types of things, not just the shoes. So more as an academic approach. They were writing papers. We saw that technology had come a long way. And so we made a deal with MMU as Plymouth Rock Technologies to acquire that IP. So we've acquired that shoe scanner IP, and now we're commercializing that, which we do very well, taking it from a laboratory environment, making it an industrial version and commercializing it. And as Douglas pointed out, which is very, very important, making it affordable. If you have something that's $100,000 that the market can only bear a $10,000 thing, you're not going to sell too many. So that's something that we always keep in mind, is manufacturing is a key part of the engineering cycle. So you have to manufacture the product so it's cheap enough for your school systems to buy. We all know that school systems don't have a lot of budget for security. And so that's our big goal, is we're going to make this stuff work. We've already made it work. Now we're commercializing the product so it's affordable to everybody. So we've worked with the Met Police and other law enforcement agencies. Obviously, I've talked about the Unique Mission Cell, the Army Special Ops, the UK Home Office, DHS. We were actually involved as another company with the Air Force on a Project Angel Fire, it was called. We were doing drone-mounted communication systems and transmitting that to the ground, and then doing point-to-point wireless communications at gigabit rates to transmit video down in real time. So when you start to see what we're doing as a company now and what we did in the past, it all kind of connects together. And geez, these guys have experience of doing that. They were already doing this with the Air Force and so forth. So that's kind of the background on some of the agencies we've worked with. We've also been a small business in the U.S. For other companies that we were with, and we won a lot of small business innovative research grants. And so we were working with different agencies, Navy, Army, DOE, and so forth. So we've got a lot of contacts there. We've worked with a lot of national laboratories, Sandia, Los Alamos, and we know a lot of people there. And with the technology that we have today, we know the right people to call to get us in the door and solve some problems right away for them.
Absolutely. Dana, you mentioned a couple of team members there by name. Of course, we've got Douglas here with us today, but are there any others that you've added that you'd like to talk about, specifically that are helping to move the project forward, or anybody working on the tech that we haven't talked about?
Well, Carl Tagliarini is kind of my right-hand guy, because we've known each other for over 20 years. We've worked at different positions, but we've met each other. It's the same technologies. He was working for a company up in Vancouver, which was doing free space optics radios, and we were doing millimeter wave radios. So we were kind of competing, but we'd always meet at the trade shows and so forth. And we'd always compare notes after. So Carl's our chief strategic officer and marketing, does a great job for us. And he was with us at RPS, at Radio Physics, and now with Plymouth Rock. So he's been instrumental, especially in the UK, and guiding the UK team too, because I can't be there all the time. So we have a good leadership team over there. I mentioned Dr. Stewart Harmer. He was at Manchester Met for a long time. So we worked hand in hand with some of these grants from the Met Police and the Home Office, wrote a lot of publications, a lot of patents, really smart guy. He's kind of our professor behind the scenes that looks at our system block diagrams and says, yeah, this is the right direction to go. And again, he does all our IP work for us too. So we have a bunch of other guys that are adding value to the company. And we're going to grow this company now over the next year. We're probably going to double the size of the company in the next year.
Oh, great. We're going to be talking about some exciting stuff here. So obviously you guys are building next level threat detection for not just land, but sea, space, and air. Or I should have said land, air, sea, and of course, space. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's start with each segment. So land, what is some of the tech that you want to jump in with that, you kind of are excited to talk about? Either one of you guys.
Okay, well, I'll kick it off, and I'm sure Douglas will be able to, if I've missed something, he'll get it. But on the land side, we've already talked about the radars that we've been building for many years, and we could consider the radar a standoff radar system, a land-based system. And just as an aside, when I was talking about the unique mission cell, one of the reasons why we're engaged with them again is because they called me asking me how was our ground-based radar system going. And I said, it's going fine. I said, but how would you like to have that same system miniaturized and put on a drone? And they were like, I thought that they put me on hold. It was like a couple minutes, and they came back and said, you can do that? And I said, absolutely. We can put a millimeter wave polarimetric radar. We're going to make it small enough so we can mount on a drone, and we can do threat detection from the air. So even though that was a land terrestrial type product, now it's going on to a drone. And also with our comm systems that we've developed over the years, we were kind of experts and pioneers in the wireless communication space in the millimeter wave spectrum. We were the first company at the time to do a 60 gigahertz gigabit full throughput wireless communication system. Well, now what we're doing is that's a point-to-point. You can call it land-based, even though they sit on radio towers. You can see them every day as you're driving around. You can see these microwave dishes on radio towers that are on building tops. We built these for high-speed trading, high-frequency trading you've heard of down on Wall Street and in Chicago, for very fast wireless comms for making trades. So those, you can call them land-based, but you can also call them air-based too, because now we're mounting them on a drone, using them for surveillance, using the wireless comm systems to transmit the data that we're getting from the air to the ground and then to a network operations center. So then it can be transmitted to law enforcement and the first responders so they can go see what's going on in the areas that we're doing surveillance and so forth. So that kind of handles a couple of the land and the air. The other land-based one is our shoe scanner, as I mentioned, that we acquired from MMU. We actually have another patent application that we did in the United States, and that was to measure not only image through the bottom of the shoes, because we already know that through that shoe bomber, people can actually put small explosives in the heels of their shoes. But guess what? They can also put contraband. They can put drugs in there. They can put money. They can put small cell phones. And the reason why we know this, we've talked to other security companies that are selling metal detectors, just your regular metal portals, metal detector portals that you walk through at the airport. If you don't want to go through the Pro Vision body scanner, you can elect to go through the metal detector. Well, they use a lot of those in prisons and penitentiaries and correctional institutes. They are less expensive than the millimeter wave scanners now. But what we found from some of those manufacturers that they sell them into the prisons is 95% of contraband that gets smuggled into prisons through people's shoes, including the guards, mostly the guards. So when we found that out, we thought this is going to be an airport security play. We got to find a partner that we can integrate in with their system, like a body scanner. It'd be great to integrate our shoe scanner into the body scanner. So when you're standing in line, you go into the body scanner, you don't have to take your shoes off, and you're getting your shoe scanned and your body scanned at the same time. The worst thing that can happen, either with a false alarm or a real alarm in the shoe, is they ask you to take your shoes off, and then they'll send them through the conveyor belt like they normally do through a CT scanner. So that was the core application that we were going after. And then we found numerous applications after that, including the prison smuggling. And then another key application we found out is through a company, very large entertainment company, and you'll guess who they are. They make PlayStation discs and stuff like that. And they were finding out that they were having a numerous amount of employee theft off the production lines for these little discs. And they were buying body scanners, and eventually they found it on people's bodies, employees' bodies, and then they started to go away. Yet the production lines were missing parts. So they found out that people were smuggling it in their shoes and in their boots. And so we found another application for the shoe scanner for theft prevention. So again, now that opened up talking to these big retail outlets, whether people are stealing in Target and Walmarts and those types of things, and throwing jewelry or whatever have you in their shoes. So it opened up a whole different kind of a commercial application for us.
Oh, I bet. And so this shoe scanner is being used now in real time. It's not just a concept. It's
no, just a concept. We have patents on it, and we have trial units, but we're at that inflection point where we've taken enough data, and we're going to talk about this a little later on when we talk about artificial intelligence and everything like that. We have enough data where we can actually start doing some what we're going to call like beta site testing at some of these retail operations, our airports, our law enforcement agencies. We're at that point now with this.
Got it. So we've covered 2 points there, a little bit of air, a little bit of land. Let's talk about
the space. Okay, I'll start with the space side. Then
sure.
Maybe Douglas can help me with the sea side, because we do everything we just mentioned can go on a boat too. The space side's very interesting. We acquired a company back in October of last year, a company called Aerowave, and it's public information. It's been on our website for quite some time. Aerowave was a very unique company that had been around for about 50 years. And we call them the jewelers of the industry because they made the highest quality waveguides. What a waveguide is, it's a transmission line. It's like a fiber optic cable to data people, or an Ethernet cable to data people and a computer people. What waveguide does, it carries our waves. It transmits our waves through a rectangular waveguide. It's a rigid waveguide. It's like a plumbing pipe. I compare it, they used to call microwave engineers plumbers because we use piping to transmit our frequencies through. We'd bend the pipe, it'd have to go around the corner. We twisted it, it'd have to go in a different direction. So we acquired this company because it had very, very strong ties to companies like NASA, JPL. We still sell to JPL to date. When we acquired Aerowave, we had purchase orders from JPL on the books that we had to fulfill. We fulfilled them very nicely. We met the quality standards that NASA and JPL needed us to meet. And so we're continuing with those relationships. We've sold a lot of stuff into Lockheed Martin, to their space group in Colorado for crosslinks for satellites. Again, Aerowave got this business. They had it for years. They had the quality there. And so we just took over that. We used their process that they used for years and years and years. And that's how we got into that business. So the Aerowave business was a strategic business. We do have revenue with it now, which is always a plus for a startup public company. The revenue is very profitable revenue, by the way. Upwards of 60% margins on this, and sometimes higher. And so, that was a great acquisition, because now we're talking to engineering and scientists and program managers and these large government organizations that would have taken us a little longer to get in as just Plymouth Rock. So those are three of the examples. On the C side, any example that we can give you, because we're, the drones that we have now with the different sensors, we can use those for non-destructive testing of infrastructure. And we can also use the millimeter wave radars for radar applications, because I told you it penetrates clothing. Well, it also penetrates fog, and it penetrates dust and smoke. So you can see using it in a battlefield situation. You can see it using in fires, where there's with fires for the fire departments, whether it's forest fires, whether it's a building fire, and they want to go find out where the hot spots are. They can use a combination of infrared and millimeter wave to do that. Well, from a shipboard standpoint, you can also inspect and do maintenance on shipboards, because millimeter wave penetrates paint and infrared gives you another aspect of imaging. The two of them, along with video, you can actually look for any infrastructure cracks or corrosion that's built up on a shipboard or a very large aircraft carrier, which costs the Navy lots and lots of money to do manually with man lifts and X-ray machines. And so there's an aspect of non-destructive testing that we can have with our drones to measure infrastructure under bridge trusses, instead of sending a truck roll. We call it a truck rollout with a man lift and a portable X-ray machine and a lot of time and manpower and liability, insurance liability. Now we can do that with a drone and our technology. Pipelines, oil pipelines, national gas pipelines can also be inspected for cracks along the seams, and shipboards and aircraft. We had Boeing visit us at one of the trade shows, asking us about our drones, that they were buying commercial drones and their commercial drones kept failing, and they couldn't fly them in all weather conditions. Our drone was a purposely built drone for all weather conditions. It won't take ingress of water. It's environmentally sealed. We can fly to 35, 40 mile an hour wind gusts, where the commercial drones cannot do. So we have other aspects that we designed our drone to, but those are just a few things that got us to reach. We have a reach now into all these four different areas.
Great. Douglas, I'm going to let you jump in there with any insight you might have on this.
Sure. I'll just emphasize on one area where I'll slightly amend. I said that the coolest thing about our company is that we're taking known things off the shelf and not reinventing the wheel. The one minor exception is in the drone. When we started looking around and wanting to drone mount some of these great technologies, we ran into a significant problem. We could not find, in this current political environment, a drone that was 100% US or NATO sourced parts. Everything we saw had Chinese parts on it. So first and foremost, for our customer base, it was a no-go. If we wanted to sell to them, it had to be 100% US or NATO. So, Canada, United Kingdom, et cetera, sourced parts. Two, to Dana's point, they couldn't do the missions. Like, we wanted something that could handle the weather, something that could handle the temperatures and all that. So, one of the exciting things, and the drone is in production. If you want to order one right now, break out your checkbook. We'd be delighted to sell you one. This is not something you buy at Sharper Image. But at the same time, it's highly competitive. So, the drones that we are making, whether it's the military, three-letter agencies, we were at the International Security Show in New York in the fall, and one of the mid-level officers from the New York City Fire Department came by and saw it, got so excited that he brought his boss, the head of all aviation for the New York City Fire Department, to the show the next day, who lost his mind about it. Unbelievable, the technology that we're bringing to it. Flash forwarding to the New York City Police Department, amongst everything else they're dealing with right now, woke up a couple weeks ago to find out, oops, they're using Chinese source drones. And so you can imagine the hoopla that went there. But once again, we're bringing a product, a technology product to market that the market wants, that it needs, and that it fits into a space that's affordable, whether it's hovering over a large crowd event to scan for explosives, munitions, guns, etc., or to Dana's point, the ability to quickly and quietly scan large structures. When in the real estate business, if you were to go out today and buy a large building in Toronto, part of that deal is the entire facade needs to have been inspected. That's an expensive thing. Imagine if the inspector could just be sitting there in his car, running off his iPad, launch the drone, zips up and down, and a very short amount of time through our proprietary penetrating radars, scans the entire building, and now it can be sold. So you've just saved both the buyer and the seller a lot of money. You save time. To Dana's point on insurance, you're not having to put scaffolding up. So it's creating efficiencies, and that is, at our core, what we are so proud of is how do we do things quicker, faster, and more efficient to maximize our return for our investors. Putting on my chairman hat for a second, to us, and to me, it's very important. It's all about ROI. A lot of people are believing and trusting in us, and there's a reason that our stock, knock on wood, continues to nicely move up, because we are being very smart with the investors' money. How are we using things that we can use our secret sauce, but then make them efficient and bring them to market quickly?
Douglas, you mentioned this a couple of times, and I want to talk a little bit about it. You mentioned how some of these agencies are very cautious when it comes to Chinese components, or components made in China, I should say, and parts. Do you want to maybe talk about why that's such a, not only, not really a fully, I don't know if it's right for me to call it a threat, but why is it on people's minds to be cautious about things like that?
Sure. Well, let me just back up for a second, because the most important threat, the threat is to the business marketplace, because particularly in the United States and the United Kingdom, in fact, today, Boris Johnson just, once again, went to war against Hawaii. So it's, the government have set a standard. And so if you want to sell to a very lucrative sector of the market, you need to follow by their rules. So I could dodge it and say, it's not for me to decide whether it's a threat or not. The reality is the customer has said, if there is anything Chinese in it, we will not buy it. So if I want to sell you a shirt and you come in and say, I will only buy a 100% cotton shirt, and it's 50% cotton, 50% polyester, you're not going to buy it.
Absolutely.
And so first and foremost, our goal is to have a product that people will buy. We're not selling to the average consumer. We're not selling to my daughter to buy a fun drone for her birthday. She's not my customer. My customer is the United States Navy.
You think her checkbook is not big enough?
Yeah, perhaps. So I think it's an important thing. Putting on my national security hat, do I think there's a threat if there's Chinese paint on it? No. Maybe there's some toxic threats, but do I think there is absolutely proven certifiable threat if they're transistors or components or mechanical elements? Absolutely. And so from our point of view, since we are in the risk mitigation business, why take the risk? We don't have to. We have been able to, through Carl's leadership and our acquisition team, we have been able to source, build something from product that is 100% approved by the Canadian government, by the United States government, by the British government, by the Swiss. So why not go that way?
Yeah, why compromise it?
Exactly. And in fact, it has made us, a real competitive advantage. And it is a crowded space in some ways, although the product we have brought to market is unique. Our payload capability is unique. Our time in the air is unique. Our ability to have it totally sourced from, domestic parts is unique. And so, as the old expression goes, don't upset the apple cart. I'm no longer in government. It's not my responsibility to ascertain as to whether it's the Chinese or the North Koreans or whatever. But if my customer says, I want this, I'm going to give my customer what they want, because then they're going to buy it.
Goes back to the old adage, right? Customer is always right.
Customer is always right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the reality is, we've built something really, really cool. The thing is, we didn't start off to get in the drone business. It's been a nice benefit, though. I mean, we started off to get into delivering these incredible threat detection technologies, but we realized if we really wanted to take it to the next level, we needed a platform that we could count on, and there was nothing out there that we could count on. Nothing that we felt had the stability that it could do, and didn't have the technological specs that our customers would accept.
Yeah, and it's a great point, Douglas, because if you remember, we were out at, myself and Carl had visited New Mexico, and we were out at Sandia National Laboratories, and the same holds for Los Alamos. They had to ground their drones. DHS made them ground, and they had hundreds of drones in their fleet that were basically doing surveillance over the hundreds of miles of property that they had, that they were doing, probably some confidential things. So that they came to us when we were talking about another product and said, geez, we had to ground all our drones. We need a solution that doesn't have Chinese controllers that could potentially steal our video feed and so forth.
Great point.
That kind of woke us up, and we went, as Douglas pointed out, we went from using it as just a transport platform to test our sensors to say, instead of selling sensors to drone companies or aircraft companies, we might as well do it. And we met a small company that was kind of, just making some very purposeful drones, and we partnered with them, and now we work hand in hand with those guys. So we learned a lot from them, they learned a lot from us, and so it was a win-win situation.
Got it. Your news, I know we're almost reaching the top of the hour here. We'll probably just take another little bit here, just get through one or two more things. Your recent news has been talking about a product called the PRT X1.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about that? It's an unmanned aircraft?
So that's the drone.
That's the drone. Okay. That's the drone. I just didn't realize it was.
Yep. So that is the drone. So we have that. The platform's called the X1. So the X1 is a smaller drone. It could sit right on your desktop or on your table in there. It folds into like a Pelican box. So you can roll it around like a large, like I would say a large piece of luggage, but still you can roll it around. We've checked it on airplanes, commercial airplanes before. It's got 2 batteries in it. Those ones have to travel separately for obvious reasons. But so it's battery powered. And as we talked about some of the specifications about it's, all weatherproof, speed, a payload designed for all our sensors. So that's what we started off with the X1. When we started talking to potential customers, we also have developed what we call our XV platform. That's a vertical takeoff and landing. We call it a VTOL. People might have seen that acronym before. That's vertical takeoff and landing. So that'll go straight up. That can land on any small area or on a shipboard, more of a military type. We're going to do a gas-powered engine in that. It's going to have 7 to 8 hours flight time as opposed to an hour or so. So again, we're taking that. That would be perfect for flying along borders, because you'll get a lot longer flight time for the sea, ocean type missions and so forth. So that's just kind of a scale. We've done a scale model of the XV right now that works very well. That's how we kind of work. We do the scale, and then we'll build up to the actual model, and that's what we're in process doing now. But both drones will pretty much have the same communication systems, U.S. parts, U.S. and NATO parts on them. So we're keeping the same theme for both those product lines, but they're both drones.
Got it. Well, gents, I think we've covered most of the stuff that we wanted to get through here. I think we've actually covered all of the stuff that we wanted to get through. Dana, why don't I let you tell our viewers your website and where they can find more details on some of this technology that you guys are working on?
Okay, very easy. Our website's www.plyrotech.com. And that's where a lot of people lose us. They'll go into Plymouth Rock Technologies, they'll find us there. But it's Plyrotech, Plyrotech.com. Great website. We've got videos of both the drones, both the VTOL and the X1. You'll see the shoe scanner there in action and so forth. So Our ticker symbol CSE is PRT. We're on the OTCQB also, and yeah, we're looking forward to the next stage of company's growth. We're at that inflection point right now where we've tested everything out and we're commercializing the product. As Douglas said, we're selling drones today. We've just got our collateral material all done, and we have some partners getting ready to sign up. So the news will be coming, and our other products are very close behind them. So that's kind of where we are today, and we look forward to moving forward.
Great, Dana. Douglas, did you want to jump in with a sign off or any message to our
No, I'll just
viewers?
say thanks for having us. I mean, we're thrilled at what we're doing, but most importantly, we're thrilled to save lives. I mean, that's why we all got into this business, and that's what we're committed to. And as they say, if you can do well by doing good, that's the best thing you can do. So
Of course.
that's what we're committed to doing.
No, I appreciate that outlook from you guys. Thank you to you and your teams for all you guys do. We look forward to hosting you on another episode of Hashtag Finance in the future. Find out, where you guys have now evolved to since our conversation. And if there's anything I can help with, feel free and reach out to our viewers. This has been another episode of Hashtag Finance, brought to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange. Feel free and follow us on YouTube. It's CSC TV. We're also on all the social media channels. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And again, I thank you very much for your time. I hope that you have found this interview to be informative. Please feel free to share it with your friends and family. Thank you.